police forces will have access to passport and driving licence photographs under plans being considered for the mass adoption of facial recognition technology even. So they are going to build a database containing as many faces as possible, right? And if you then do something that means the authorities want to find you, they will be able to match footage taken from CCTV, doorbell cameras, dashboard cameras, other technologies, presumably, some of which don't even exist yet, and run it through the machine and find you. It has been described by the policing minister as the biggest breakthrough for catching criminals since DNA matching. But and again, it's not necessarily the thickest of ice that I feel beneath my feet when I say this, but they don't have a library of our DNA, regardless of whether or not we wanted them to have it. So, I mean, that's the problem here, isn't it? You're only going to be on this database, as far as I can understand, if you have come to the attention of the authorities. So albeit that they will have access to passport and driving licence photographs, the plans which are included in a consultation on new legislation would essentially free up police resources spent looking for people in order to identify them. Immigration databases will also be available to the police. You're looking at about a 2-year rollout for the implementation, but facial recognition technology, a database, if you like, of people that they are... there's a bit, you can tell from my voice, there's a little bit about this that I don't get. Will it have all of our faces in it? And that, in some ways, is both the fear and the question, isn't it? Because why shouldn't it? Why shouldn't they? I mean, you're not required to give DNA. I think it does. They're going to have access to passport and driving license photographs, which means they're going to have an enormous database. I mean, I look like, Elaine points out, like a lot of people, I also look like a criminal in my passport photograph. It's an extraordinarily unflattering picture, but happily it won't just be looking a bit dodgy that qualifies you for inclusion in this process. You're going to have retrospective facial recognition used to match crime scene footage against images on the police national database. And I still don't feel frightened. I mean, I do now. We've talked about this a few times. As it gets ever closer... Oh, do you know what I did last night? Of course you don't. That would be weird. I watched 12 Angry Men. One of my daughters is studying film, among many other things, and she was required to watch 12 Angry Men, and I'm trying to watch a lot of these films with her for 2 reasons. One, it's lovely to spend time together, and secondly, there's quite a lot of gaps in my film watching. In terms of the absolute stone-cold classics, I couldn't remember whether I'd watched 12 Angry Men. And I don't think that I had. I might have seen it as a play about 30 years ago, because it began life as a play. But my goodness me, what an extraordinary piece of drama that is. And it changed the way I thought about jury trials, in a way, because none of David Lammy's proposals are going to come close to a murder trial. You can shout "yet" at the radio if you want, but it's not necessarily a justified response. But just watching... can we do we don't need a spoiler alert on a 50-year-old film, do we? Oh, really? Eleanor thinks perhaps we do. Okay. So watching the workings of jury deliberations, okay? That's not very exciting, is it? Watching the workings of jury deliberations. But it made me think slightly differently about the conversations we had last week about jury trial, possibly earlier this week. I wonder what it would take. It's not that... Is it the Tom Cruise film? What's the Minority Report? Hasn't made me think differently about this. I just think, and forgive me for self-indulgence again, I kind of think I should be more frightened by this. I kind of don't feel the fear that I should fear. Part of it is Scott's fault. my friend Scott, who dealt with one of my early fears about this, which was, well, what if we introduce the technology and then we end up with a fascist government, which, according to the opinion polls, is quite a real possibility at the moment. What if we adopt this technology with a non-fascist government, although there's plenty of people who think that the current government has elements of fascism. I'm not one of them, but I acknowledge the existence of the people who do. What if we bring in this technology and then the fascists get into power and use it to track down people who, for example, say mean things about them? To which Scott's response was pretty irresistible, actually. He just said, look, if the fascists want that technology, then they'll bring it in when they get into power. It's not really an argument against doing it. You don't say, we better get rid of the army, because what if the fascists get in? And then they'll be using the army to attack our own people. Oh, hang on. That's reminded me. Simon Marks will be joining us at 11:45 to talk about the political situation, and unfolding elements of the political situation in the United States of America. As I display every time we talk about AI or similar, I'm not as au fait with technological advances as I am with some of the other subjects that we discuss together. But I kind of think that this is a no-brainer. It's a biometric tool. The police are going to use it. They're going to be able to access the plethora, the proliferation of images that we have now but didn't have before. You will be able to, there's an app in Wales that allows officers to carry out real-time searches in the street of the database. What exactly is being infringed here? There is a perception that this is Big Brother watching, concedes Superintendent Ian Taylor, who's in charge of the facial recognition work. This is Big Brother watching, police gathering personal information, and that is not the case. I would say to the public, you have nothing to worry about. 1,300 arrests by the Metropolitan Police in the past 2 years using this technology. They found more than 100 registered sex offenders who were in breach of their licence conditions. But still only 6 forces use it routinely, while others borrow the equipment for specific purposes. The plan is to extend it to every police force in the country, including the British Transport Police. What am I supposed to be frightened of? I've asked you this before, and I will probably ask it you again, unless you bring the clincher to the table. What am I supposed to be frightened of? Because I think that we've dealt with the most urgent concern, which was what it might be used for in the future. I'm worried about now. What am I supposed to be worried about now? I think, and I usually find myself siding with civil liberties organisations or human rights organisations when it comes to state overreach, but I find myself wondering whether we are all being a little bit Luddite, whether we are a little bit like the widespread perception of King Canute on the beach. Everybody thinks historically that he was trying to turn back the tide, but he wasn't. He was demonstrating to his nobles that he couldn't. He was reminding them that he was not divine, or at least he was not possessed of supernatural powers. Look, I am telling the tides to stop coming in, and they're still coming in, so stop treating me, said King Canute, as if I am all-powerful and I can make things happen that can't happen. It seems to me that the technology is a little bit like the tide on this one, and that you can sit there as a civil liberties organisation, or indeed as a worthy figure, and say, this is terrible, we must resist it, but the tide's going to come in anyway. Yeah, we've got doorbells now. I can now literally see whether there's anybody outside my house. I can pick up my phone. You know this. I'm not shocking you with any new information. I can pick up my phone now, press a couple of buttons, and I can see my garden path. I literally see it. So the idea that the police wouldn't be availing themselves of new technology as and when it becomes available seems to me to be a little bit bonkers. That is, and it's not 52-48 today, that is about 65% of my feeling at the moment, that resisting this is ridiculous. 35% of my feeling is a sense that there's something a little bit wrong. A sense that I should be worried. but I'm not quite sure what I should be worried about, and I want you to tell me. You are also, of course, welcome to join me in being cautiously welcoming of this technology. In the secure knowledge that I will never be a sex offender, the idea of being able to identify sex offenders who are in breach of their terms without any other fuss or rigmarole seems to me to be a wonderful thing. Or indeed, criminals who are on the lam, as I think the phrase used to be. People who've absconded. In a world where the Justice Secretary seems to be routinely revealing that prisoners have been released by accident, surely it's going to be a heck of a lot easier to find them and get them back into prison if we're deploying this facial technology. So, in a world where I can currently see the garden path outside my house from 4 or 5 miles away, what am I supposed to be worried about with regard to facial recognition technology? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. I don't think it's one of those stories that is going to admit much personal experience. I mean, I know that some of the early iterations of it, some of the technology made people from ethnic minorities much more likely to be misidentified than people who weren't. And I'm not making light of that, but it would be something that was dealt with. And again, I fully appreciate that that's easy for me to say as someone who wouldn't be on the wrong end of it. But the technology is only going to improve. What are we supposed to be worried about? As the civil liberties organisations and sundry other people who I respect and admire queue up to tell us to be careful what we wish for, what is wrong with wishing for this?